OC would be on.
Right. Okay.
Well, again, if we can ever get a show for you here in OC Talk Radio, I think we'd love to talk to you about that. As we're not free, but we'd
Right.
love to find a way to do it for you here.
Sure,
Okay, all right. So here we go. Is everybody set?
Yeah.
I think we are.
All right, let's take a deep breath, and here we go. In three, two, one.
All right.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time once again for another episode of Health Talks with Dr. Trinh. The one show where all your questions, well, at least some of your concerns, get addressed, hopefully answered. From the man who's been explaining them to many of us here for a long time, Dr. Trinh. Welcome, Dr. Trinh.
Good morning. Another Thursday morning.
Another Thursday morning, and we're still in the midst of all this craziness, but we're starting to reopen. We're starting to stick our heads up out of the sand, and as is
Right.
appropriate, we're going to talk about some other health topics here today, not just make this strictly a Corona show, although I know that there are aspects of this that touch every one of these groups. So invite your guest in and have her introduce herself.
Yeah, we have Patty with us today, and I've known Patty for a good number of years now. She is with Alzheimer's Orange County, one of the VPs there, and Patty is awesome. So that's why I wanted to bring her on today to kind of share a little bit about first who she is, and then what's going on with AlzOC in this pandemic
So give
overall.
us your background, Patty, and welcome again.
Well, thank you. I certainly appreciate the invitation. It's great to be here bright and early on a Thursday morning. Um, I have been on staff at Alzheimer's Orange County coming up on 15 years. Prior to that, I was working in hospice care, and for about 5 years, I volunteered for Alzheimer's Orange County as a speaker, and I helped them write some professional in-services, and I facilitated um, support groups for family caregivers. So my background is 40 years in healthcare in some way, shape, or role. I'm not a clinical professional, but I have a bachelor's of science in health human services, and I have graduate certificates in palliative chaplaincy and in gerontology. And I'm a candidate now for my master's in gerontology.
Oh, my
So that's
goodness.
kind of my pedigree, if you will. But my passion for helping people with dementia was born out of working in hospice care and helping our admissions nurses bring people onto hospice and realizing that oftentimes the well spouse who was going to be managing things for the person with terminal cancer had cognitive deficits. And I kind of scratched my head and I said, I may not be a nurse, but I can sure see that this person is going to need more support. And I got involved with Alzheimer's Orange County, learned everything I could, went back to school to learn more. And now I feel like we are really making some progress in supporting the families of those caring for loved ones with a dementia.
So before you guys delve into your topics here, I just have to ask one question. As it's the question in everybody's mind these days, how has the current crisis affected your organization, your ability to get out there, raise money, raise awareness, all that? Give us the good and the bad. I don't know if there's any good, but tell us where you're at with this whole problem.
Well, there is a lot of good in it. And the good has come from people rising to the occasion, working extra hard to help to provide some of these vital services without wondering how it's going to benefit them. In terms of fundraising, we basically have just stopped fundraising during this time period. We have reserves. Jim is an extremely visionary leader and very prudent financially. And so we are weathering that storm. We have not laid off any employees. We're keeping them busy doing tasks other than what their classic role might have been, myself included. And
You're now doing
we are
podcasts in the morning here on Facebook. Here.
podcasts in the morning, toilet paper deliveries. I mean, I've done all kinds of things. But our focus is on what we can do now. And then we believe that the fundraising will equalize and things will come back to normal and we will be whole.
And you mentioned
So
Jim. That's the great Jim McAleer, who's been on this show several times in the past.
that's the great Jim McAleer. Absolutely. It's his leadership and inspiration that has kept those of us who might be worrywarts like me kind of just focused on the mission. We have to help people as much as we can with whatever resources we have. And so we've done a lot of really non-classic things, like thousands and thousands and thousands of rolls of toilet paper to people who couldn't get it.
Isn't that
To
crazy?
board and care homes who would shop at Costco. They've got 6, maybe they have 24 people in their care, and they go to Costco and they go to all the markets, the shelves are empty. Well, we were providing cases of toilet paper to people who were caring for older adults.
So you have to add that to your mission statement now here. Things that you accomplished.
Well, it's certainly a new addition to my resume. My cell phone number actually got on the county's 211 information line,
Wow.
and I had people calling me. And my goodness, think about how desperate somebody must be to need those kinds of personal supplies. And you know what? I gladly drove out to apartments to bring people enough to last them until they could get it off the shelves.
So where do you want to take this morning, Dr. Trinh? It's you've been with this organization as well for a long time, and what would you like people to know? What would you like to talk about this morning here with Alzheimer's?
Well, it's amazing the partnership we have had with Alzheimer's Orange County, and the services and the programs that are provided to our patients with, and most of them are at no cost. There's over 45 support groups now in different languages for those who are suffering from memory loss and for their caregivers. There are now these healthy brain classes that are done weekly, well, prior to COVID, and in person to help folks improve their and sustain their memories. And they have one-on-one education, one-on-one counseling, all types of services that are amazing. How many patients did ALZOC serve last year?
Well, in our education area, we had more than 25,000 people go through education classes. So then in addition to that were the support groups, and the support group attendance varies from maybe 5 people to 35 people. So it's hard to put a number on the exact number of people that we served, but it's more than 80,000. And almost everything that we did prior to the quarantine, we have now switched to an online platform. So there's been very little interruption of services.
That's amazing.
So can I ask one quick question here before you delve too far into it? Jim, when he was here, told me a statistic, and I'm sure I've fumbled it through the years, but it was shocking. It was like, because of our longevity, because of how long people are projected to live, it's like 75 or 80% of people sometime in their lifetime will have some sort of memory loss, of cognitive dysfunction, lack of something here. I don't know. You tell me. Is it really that high, or are all of us going to have some sort of brain deterioration because we live so long?
What's your name again?
Thanks.
Who are you? Why are we
It's happening right now.
Wrong person to ask.
Yeah.
I will tell you that 1 in 3 older adults, 1 in 3 dies with or from Alzheimer's disease.
Wow. That's
And at the age of 65, approximately 1 in 9 people have a dementia percolating. And that goes up, and that trajectory goes way up the older we get. So we're living so much longer. We're going to have more 85-year-olds in Orange County in the next 15 to 20 years than any place else in the country. And the majority of that population is going to have some kind of cognitive deficit. At age 85, about 40 to 50% of people either already have the disease or are starting to show symptoms.
So,
So it
so is
is
it
a major health issue.
so is it just that our brains aren't made to last this long, or are we doing? Could we do better, as Dr. Trinh always talks about, to increase our brain health and make it uh, sustainable?
I don't think it's because our brain is not wired to live this long. And the reason I say that is that there are certain areas of the world where folks live as long as Americans do without Alzheimer's being in the top diagnosis. So it isn't just a problem with aging. It's a problem of what you're exposed to in your lifestyle that accumulates as you age. And
So
and so there are these.
give us some of those things. What are we doing wrong? What accumulates in our body that doesn't accumulate in? I'm assuming these are Asian countries or some other places that.
Not necessarily all Asians. There are areas in the world called the blue zone. You've heard them,
I never have.
right?
No.
The blue zones are areas in the world, pockets of areas in the world where folks live to, 100 years old easily
Hmm.
with their mind intact and their health intact. So the question is, what are they doing different
Hmm.
than what we are doing? Um, some of those areas include Okinawa. Um, they are southern Italy is an area. Areas of
Somebody told me the
Ecuador,
Caucasus region for some reason, the Ural
right?
Mountains and
Ecuador
all.
is an area. Some areas in Ecuador, and also Loma Linda.
Loma Linda here in California.
Loma
Okay.
Linda is an area that's a blue zone. Um, so, so the question is, what do they have in common,
Okay.
right? Why are they there? Why does everyone there live? And there are actually 8 things that we have looked at in that has been researched that they share in common.
Okay.
Those
Give us the 8 things here. I'm ready to write them down here or something.
I'm trying to remember what they are. My memory's not that great, but I can tell you a few. I can tell you a few. Number one, plant-based diet.
Mm.
Plant-based diet.
Boy, let's just start with that one. That's just not American. That's just not the American way. My wife's a vegetarian. She does most of the cooking in our house, all the cooking. So I always say I'm not a vegetarian, but when your cook is, it's kind of the same thing. And I really don't miss meat and all that stuff. I mean, and when I'm out, I'll still, you know, fall off the wagon here and eat something. But we have she'll make chicken for me, and we eat a lot of fish and pastas and salads and stuff like that. I just don't know how can we get Americans off of this dependence on meat.
It is the American lifestyle that we are meat eaters. But we know that those who are plant eaters happen to live longer. Um, and I think when we think about not eating meat, there's a fear of the lack of protein,
That's my
right?
fear always, that somehow you're going to get enough protein if you're just
Somehow you're
eating.
going to get enough protein.
Right.
The the answer is that you can get protein from plants.
Yeah, and that's my
As
wife keeps
simple as
saying. It's
that.
simple as that, but doesn't seem like it seems like oh my goodness.
Right.
And now in this, if you want one other reason to change your diet, look at what's happening with the meat processing plants. It makes you think all again. How safe are these meat processing plants? I mean, I'm not trying to create a scare or whatever here, but you know,
Yeah,
it's this is a process, is a very expensive process, and it's subject to breakdowns in the chain like this much more than plant-based diets. You don't see plant processing plants shutting down here during the COVID crisis here.
that's right. Let me compare for you, and I've looked into this as part of the longevity program that I've been educating folks on ways for to get longevity with health. So in my research, I looked at Okinawa and I looked at Americans and their lifestyle. I can tell you that Americans eat 10 times more meat than Okinawans.
Wow.
I can also tell you that Americans eat 10 times less fish than Okinawans. Uh, and And we know that those who are in those countries where fish is more predominant, they keep their brain. And it's probably because of the DHA, omega-3 content in fish that is healthy for the brain.
Now, obviously, Okinawans didn't set out to have a different diet. They didn't knowingly do this. They're an island. I'm assuming it's probably hard to grow beef and other
Right.
meat
You have to
products.
import it, right? You have to
it, right?
import beef, which is very expensive.
And so
So
they
the
turn to what's there, which is fish, and inadvertently discover the secret we're all looking for here.
Americans eat 10 times more dairy than
Yeah.
Okinawans,
Wow.
and they eat half the amount of vegetables as Okinawans.
Hmm.
So there are some thoughts there on how to keep your brain healthy and just healthy in general with that. And that's just Okinawa. I can go on and on with when we do future talks about it.
So
But
are there, Jim talked about this once before again, are there foods that we're finding are, aside from the foods we shouldn't eat, are there foods we should eat or could eat? Somebody said cinnamon. I don't know if that's true or not, but
Yeah.
are there foods that help stimulate your brain health?
yeah, what do you think, Patty? Go for it.
Well, spices like cinnamon and turmeric,
Turmeric, yeah, right.
we know have an impact on brain health, and they're still being studied. But we know that in populations, for example, where curry is very much a staple in the diet, they have a lower per capita incidence of Alzheimer's disease. And so that's still being studied. It doesn't mean go out and eat curry every day, but if you like it, it probably can't hurt. And it's showing us that we can shift from the cheeseburger and steak and baked potato mentality that that makes us feel affluent, and go toward the diets that we looked on societally or culturally as what people who are less affluent might eat, and embrace that, because it doesn't matter if you're affluent if you don't live very long.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So meat doesn't have to be the staple.
Well, it was in my life. I grew up in the Midwest, and it was meat and potato, and I'm Irish, so you add all those
Sure.
elements together. There was only two elements on every meal, and it was meat and potatoes.
Right, and sometimes cabbage,
Yeah,
overboiled.
maybe, yeah. Oh, I hated vegetables because they all came in a can and they were mushy, and yeah, right.
Right. And understandably so. But now we have this access across the country to fresh vegetables and a variety of vegetables that are really, really not only tasty, but dense in nutrition. And we need to just look at what are the dark green, dark red, dark purple vegetables, and just incorporate them into your diet. Just make sure that your plate is mostly 7/8 vegetables and maybe 1/8 the protein. And then you'll be better off.
Okay, so diet's one. I've heard that before. Anything else we can do to stimulate brain health to not slide into this scary statistic where half of us at some point in time are going to have some sort of cognitive loss? Any other
Well,
things?
how about getting up and moving? Physical exercise, aerobic exercise, is about the only thing that we can say with absolute scientific certainty changes the trajectory of brain health. And that's work that's been done right here locally at UC Irvine. But you just have to get up and move.
And how much do I have to? Do I have to do 20 minutes? Do I have to do 200 steps? What? Give me some baselines. I want to know specific. I love to have checklists. Okay, I did that today. I did my 52 sit-ups or whatever.
Well, they say 30 minutes of aerobic exercise a day is kind of the minimum. But what do you think, Dr. Trinh? What should we be doing?
I walk back and forth to the fridge all day.
See, man
A
of
lot.
my heart here, right? Yeah.
And so, yeah, but I agree, Patty, at least half an hour a day. And for those who cannot do half an hour a day because their knees hurt or their back hurts, they can split it up to 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening, as long as it adds up to half an hour. It at a minimum would be good.
And is it, so you're talking about aerobic exercise? You've got to get your
You want your heart pumping a little
heart
bit.
pumping. Okay.
Yeah,
All
you
right.
want your heart pumping a little bit.
So walking, I could start with just walking.
Walking's very good. Or Vicky, I'm looking at our chat on
Yeah, I was
Facebook
trying to
here.
look at the same thing here. Yeah.
Yeah, Vicky's doing mini trampoline.
Oh, I
Mm.
love that.
Oh
Now
wow.
she also said she's doing fasting. What do you think about that? Is that if we binge, do we purge? Maybe that's a horrible way to put it, but if we overdo something, do we try and underdo it? Do we try and cleanse ourselves?
Yeah, Vicky's on the trampoline. I guess when she's jumping, it's hard to eat. So she's like intermittently fasting as she is on the trampoline
But is
during those
fasting
intermittent episodes. Is
is
that right,
fasting a
Vicky?
good thing? I don't know. Some people say you've got to go out and clean your body and get all these toxins out. I don't know. I've never tried that. I've never tried.
Yes, Jody Hudson's doing online Pilates 5 times a week. I
Oh,
love it. Online Pilates. Is that something free, Jody? I don't know if it is. If it's something, maybe you can put a link on it on our chat
yeah,
group so that
right.
others can
So I'm
participate.
coming back to press. He's ignoring my question here. Is what do you think about fasting?
Ooh, fasting. I think there's a lot of data behind fasting, especially intermittent fasting. We would do a longer session sometimes,
Okay.
but there are a lot of processes that go on in your body, health processes during the process of fasting. You get your body to burn fat if you're fasting long enough,
Hmm.
where it stops to burn sugar and it starts to burn fat. You get your body into a state of autophagy. Autophagy is a process where the body cleans out its own trash. You get your body into a state of uh, of healing and cleansing um, by taking out the trash of the body when you are fasting. You need at least 12 hours of fasting before anything positive from fasting occurs, at a minimum, and longer the better in general. But overall, fasting is now a movement because of the data that's been shown. Obviously, the weight loss comes with it and all the other side benefits, but there are cognitive improvements that are connected with fasting as well, which I'll explain sometime to you
Okay. Well,
guys.
I'd love to hear it because I lots of people talk about it. Somebody else asked a question here. One of the guests says she's having trouble watching. I'm sorry. I don't know what your transmission issue could be, a bandwidth issue. But hopefully everybody else is not experiencing any interruptions. If you are, let us know. We'll double check our transmission here. One of your people on chat here had the same question I had. Let's say you lived in the Midwest like I did, good Irish Catholic that I am, and ate all these meat and potatoes for all these many years. Is there some point at which I can, it's like if you stop smoking, have you permanently damaged your brain, I guess, or is there some way to make up for all those bad years and regain your health?
Never too late to start doing what's healthy for you. And we know in smokers, after a good number of years of quitting smoking, a lot of the healing process even occurs even after years of smoking.
So would your brain reheal, or is it an organ that once it's damaged? Some people say your heart, once it's damaged, it's done. Although I've had others say they've seen heart recoveries on plant-based diets. I think I forgot who it is, what the famous doctor that writes
Out in
about.
Is it Mayo Clinic, I think,
Yeah.
or Cleveland Clinic? Yes.
Anyway, I guess the point is, if I've done
There are,
bad things and eaten cheeseburgers all these years, and exercised and all these things, have I permanently damaged it, or is the brain regenerative?
there are strategies to improve your brain function and to stabilize brain function. I hate to use the word reverse damage, because what happens is when we lose brain cells, we lose brain cells, right? If your brain was originally this size
Right.
and now it's this size, over time. I'm not going to bring it back to this size, right? But what you can do is, for what you have here, the smaller size of your brain, we can optimize the function of that brain, right? There are certain nutrition, certain diet, certain lifestyle that can optimize what you have. And it can improve maybe the connectivity, the communication of the cells that are there. So to answer your question is yes and no. No, I can't re-expand your brain size. Yes, we can do with whatever brain size you have. We have strategies through nutrition, through diet, through exercise, through cognitive brain training and brain exercises to optimize the function of your brain. There are studies now showing that that ketones or ketone supplements, and these are really small pilot studies. These aren't studies in thousands of people, but we're seeing these small studies come out where in patients with MCI or mild memory loss, we can improve the function of their memory through supplements like MCT oil.
What is a ketone? I don't know what a ketone is. I know it's with a K, but I don't know what a ketone is.
That's right. So ketones can be, they're proteins that can be used by your brain and your body for energy. So the body can use sugar for energy, but when sugar is not available, what happens is that the body burns fat for energy, right? Plan B is burning fat. The byproduct of fat burn is these products called ketones. And this is where this whole ketogenic diet thing came from. Although I'm not 100% behind that, because many people who do the ketogenic diet, they eat all the fat they want, they eat all the meat they want, and it's the wrong diet, right? But the byproduct of producing or burning fat is making ketones. And ketones is now used by your body for energy in lieu of sugar, And if I were to be able to explain to you the difference between sugar and ketones for your as an energy source is this. If your body is a car, right? If your body's a car and that car needs gas to run, sugar is regular unleaded, whereas ketones is supreme or super unleaded.
Okay.
That would be an analogy I would use. But the problem is we never get to that state of ketosis to produce ketones because in the American diet, we never run out of sugar.
That's the truth. Go look at everything in your shelf at home here and see how much sugar has been added to it here.
Right, we're a carbohydrate-based diet, and I'm not talking about the complex carbs like plants. I'm talking about, white bread, sugar.
I love white bread. Oh my goodness!
Right,
Come on.
white rice, and it's the carbohydrate that breaks down immediately to sugar, and so we never get a chance to go without sugar. So we never get a chance to get to this state of ketosis where there's actually some health involved, some health benefits involved, which is why fasting comes into play.
Okay. All right. So we normally we end about now, but I'm going to run this another 5-10 minutes because it's a rare chance to talk about some of these things. Let's bring Patty back in here. What other things would you like to convey to people in our last 5 minutes or so? We talked about there are some strategies, and I'm assuming, let's give a website. I'm assuming in addition to Dr. Trin's Health Talks and his Healthy Brain site, you've got some information on your site. So let's start there and then tell us what else you want to convey to people.
Sure. Our website is alzoc.org for Alzheimer's Orange County. And you can find a wealth of information on the website about healthy brain strategies, about our Mind Fit program that not only helps people who are trying to keep their brains as healthy as possible, but for people that might be experiencing some early memory loss, some brain training strategies. We have a wonderful memory training class that is scientifically proven to help improve the memory of a healthy person.
If only I could remember what day the class is, I'd go, but
we can help you with that.
Okay.
And reminders. So we want people to keep their brains as healthy as possible. And when dementia is part of the equation in a family, we want people to know that we're here to support them in many, many ways, from cultural activities to prevent isolation of the person with the disease, classes so that caregivers know how best to care for their loved one and make the caregiving journey not only easier, but more successful overall, preserving the health and well-being of the caregiver as well as the person with the disease. We have information and education for healthcare professionals and senior care professionals. We go the entire gamut of life, across the continuum of life, from the beginning stages of cognitive impairment all the way through how to really structure the very best quality of care at end of life, and all points in between.
So
So
let's get a couple of facts out on the table here, points out on the table that I always worry about or wonder about. Is this just for old people, or can younger people have
that's an
Alzheimer's?
excellent question. There is a phenomenon called young onset Alzheimer's that affects people in their 40s, 50s, and early 60s. And it's typically the genetic variant of the disease, but other dementias like frontal temporal dementia or vascular dementia can impact people who are much younger, who have either a cerebral vascular event, or maybe they have a genetic predisposition to a more frontal temporal kind of dementia. People who have Parkinson's disease are prone to developing that type of dementia.
That's what my
So
mother had. My mother had, she's long
yeah,
since
it's
left.
not just
Right.
the elderly. And, for those of us that are into our 60s, elderly doesn't sound like somebody who's 60 or 62 or 63. 60 is the new 40 in
Yeah.
many of our minds.
Say that again. I like that sound of that right there.
60 is the new 40.
Exactly. So, is there a test that says I have Alzheimer's, or is it simply like Parkinson's, an observational thing? You look like you have it.
It's really a diagnosis of exclusion, finding out what isn't wrong, and then coming to a conclusion of a probability of about 95 to 98%. And it involves not only a very detailed family history, but a lot of blood chemistry work, sometimes a spinal tap to determine if there are certain elements in one's cerebral spinal fluid. Sometimes brain scans are an essential part of the diagnosis, neuropsychological testing. So it's a really comprehensive diagnostic workup in order to get to this diagnosis of exclusion and say with high probability, this is Alzheimer's type dementia.
And I hate to be negative, because nobody likes it when we're negative, but having seen people with this, my mother had Parkinson's and then developed dementia, and she lived for many years with both. It is heartbreaking to go through this, because as Nancy Reagan once said about the great Ronald Reagan, she said, it's like they've died, but we haven't buried them. They've left us, but they're still here walking around.
You know what I say to families who take that to heart is that even though a person may not be able to respond the way they did in the past, we are so much more than just what we know and who we know. The essence of who we are as human beings in mind, body, and spirit remains regardless of the ravages of a dementia. So continue to love and treat that person with the same dignity, tender, loving care, respect. And we don't know what they might be able to take in and experience. And I believe we should err toward thinking they can absorb all the loving care we're giving them, and not dwell on what they can't produce back.
It used to drive my mother crazy. She would sort of be in and out of being cognitive aware or whatever here. And so
Yes.
we'd all have a tendency to talk about her as if she wasn't in the room. Well, she's not doing well. She's this. And my mother every so often would appear out of nowhere and say, well, she is right here. You're
Exactly.
talking about me like I am dead or I'm not here.
Well, and oftentimes families say that, even very, very late stage dementia patients who maybe haven't been verbal for a while all of a sudden someone will do some kind of loving care for them,
Yeah.
and they will say thank you out of the blue. So look for those kinds of moments and know that there might be a lot happening under the surface of which we are not
And there
aware.
were things that would trigger my mother. I'm not going to get choked up here, but smells sometimes would bring back a memory, a sound of something that we wouldn't associate. All of a sudden, she would that respond to something like that and come back
Sure.
alive.
Smell and music, or something with a cadence like a poem, that evokes an emotional memory that has stayed intact in that brain. And you might hear a poem from your childhood or a song, and all of a sudden your brain and then your body is experiencing that same emotional goodness that
Exactly.
you felt when you heard it the first time.
Exactly. Well, I'm feeling better already. There's somebody out there to help guide us through this, to one, maybe help us prevent it, or lessen the occurrence of this and as we age, and two, that can guide us through it as this long, slow fade to black starts to happen, and to work with, because I think it's in some ways, my father used to say it's harder on the family than it is on the patient, because the patient doesn't know what they're going through. We don't think, for the most part, whereas the family has to live with it and deal with it every day here. All right. Any final thoughts here as we wrap this up, Dr. Trinh?
I'm hungry.
Well, it's time for you to walk to the refrigerator. Come on, you haven't been exercising very much this morning here, and put
Got
some
to get those
cinnamon on it.
10,000 steps in.
Yeah, put your
Well, I
10,000
just
steps.
thank you for the opportunity. And please let us help you. Alzheimer's Orange County is here to help anyone with any type of dementia. And we can be found at www.alzoc.org.
Are there any? This is going to sound horrible again, but are there any sort of day programs where you can drop off your Alzheimer's parents and family here? Because it's exhausting. And sometimes my dad used to say, I wish I could just get a break. Because my dad became the primary health care giver, devoted his whole life to taking care of my mother. We couldn't afford to put her in a home. God knows how expensive those are, and he didn't want to. So he had the ability to do that. But
Well, I'm really happy that you mentioned that because we do operate two adult day healthcare centers in Orange County, one in Garden Grove called Acacia, which has been there 40 years, and one in South County, Laguna Woods area, South County Adult Day Services. And that would take a whole show to talk about, but the bottom line is they are excellent programs. They provide breakfast, lunch, snack, personalized activities, supervision by clinical staff, and really wonderful social interaction throughout the day. Transportation is included,
wow.
and they're extremely, extremely cost effective.
Well, I would love to have you come back and do a show on that, because I tell you, that's the ugly secret of this. You know, you're dealing with this and you think I can handle it. It becomes overwhelming taking care of sometimes an Alzheimer's patient, and the frustration you feel and the anger and the lashing out and, all right, I told you that 10 times and stop asking me that, and then you feel terrible. I'm screaming at my mother. She doesn't even know what she's doing here. So
Well, we can provide that respite kind of care, and we can help educate caregivers so that they know how to better respond and they don't get so frustrated.
Oh, well, I wish I'd known more about this. This is many years ago now here, but it was a difficult journey for all of us in the family here. And we didn't. The doctors would just kind of shrug and say, "What do you want me to say? She's got Alzheimer's." Next, there wasn't a lot of assistance provided in anybody. This was out in the Coachella Valley and Palm Springs area. Okay, Dr. Trinh, last word goes to you.
I love these daycare centers because what I've seen, and I go to them at least monthly to do administrative stuff at Acacia. But we have done with Alzheimer's Orange County a pilot study with Monarch Medical Group. And what we have done in this study is that we look at patients who participate in daycare centers. We looked at their health status a number of months before they enter the daycare center, and we look at their healthcare status going forward after they participate in these daycare centers. Reduction in hospital admissions, reduction in UTIs, reduction in infections.
UTI, urinary tract infection. My mother used to get those constantly because she didn't.
Right.
It was hard. This is going to be gross, but it was hard to get her to clean herself after she went to the bathroom, or for us to do it, and so she was always getting infected over and over and over again. And then that had a certain dementia attached to it too. That would throw her into
Big
further.
time.
Yeah, right.
And so the costs for these daycare centers are much less than being in a nursing home, and oftentimes paid for by, Cal Optima, PACE, different programs, the VA, and we get to provide better health, because when our patients are in these daycare centers, they get socialization. They have a nurse on site. There's a dietitian. There's physical therapy on site. They get exercise that is monitored. And so, wow.
And they get out of the house. My mother got to the point she never would get out of the house, ever. Weeks, months. She'd just sleep all day or sit and stare at the wall or whatever, and we felt bad, and we know it was a downward spiral. We couldn't break the cycle of the whole thing.
Yes, and transportation is provided as part of the program, where
that's a big,
pick you up and drop you off.
Trying to get her anywhere was difficult. All right, well, we should do a show on those, because I think that would be a fantastic topic to talk about honestly and openly, what people go through in this experience, not just the patients, but the people who are trying their best to take care of them in these situations. It can become an overwhelming financial, physical, mental burden. This is your mother, and you're struggling to figure out what to do best here. Thank you for existing. Thank you for doing all the things you do, and give us the website one more time.
www.alzoc.org.
Alzheimer's Orange County. Thanks so much for coming here.
Thank you.
You've been listening to another great show here, Health Talks with Dr. Trinh, where we try and get real and really answer some of the thoughts and fears and doubts and wonders on your mind about all the health issues we face as we continue to expand the boundaries of how long we live. Right here in Orange County's only community radio station, octalkradio.net.